All right, let's start by giving you an overview of the economic survey today. 9.2% is the growth estimated for this fiscal year. For next fiscal year, it's between 8 to 8.5% that the economic survey has predicted. They've talked about how India's response to COVID-19 has helped us emerge stronger than previously expected. They've talked about how banks seem resilient from the scepter or the fear of NPAs despite 3 rounds of COVID-19. And they've also mentioned very clearly that these projections of 8 to 8.5% of growth for the next fiscal year starting from April 1st depends on 2 key factors. One of them being that crude, which is currently at over $90 per barrel, eases off to $70 to $75 per barrel. The other estimate, or the hope I would say, is that we don't have another wave of COVID-19 which would lead to restrictions that will once again impact economic growth. Let's listen in first to what the Chief Economic Advisor had to say on this year's Eco Survey.
The overall theme of the economic survey, as has been the theme of the policies that the government has pursued, especially in these COVID years, the government has pursued a 4-pronged approach: short-term support to the economy, especially to the vulnerable sections during these uncertain times, while keeping a firm eye on the medium-term fiscal stability. At the same time, never to let go of the opportunity that a crisis provides to initiate structural and supply-side reforms. The government has undertaken several measures as well. At the same time, as Sanjay would walk you through, there has been considerable attention and emphasis on process reforms as well. So these are the 4 pillars of the government's approach in dealing with the COVID pandemic and also to prepare the economy for a post-pandemic world.
Sanjay Kumar, partner Deloitte India, joining us now for his budget view. Mr. Kumar, thank you for speaking with us right here on the India Development Debate. Let me first begin by getting your overview on the economic survey. I think one standout clearly was the buoyancy in tax receipts that we have seen, and that pretty much sets the government up for whatever is coming next, isn't it?
Thanks, Tamanna, for having me on your program. Yes, I think in the limited framework of 1 year, if I see, then obviously the tax collections have been quite robust, and they are, making the numbers somewhere around what was budgeted for. But my biggest worry is that it has got stuck into this, less than 10% of tax to GDP ratio. And I think this is the time for the government to move on that. And that is something which we should be looking forward to, because there are competing demands on the from the expenditure side. And unless the taxes don't keep up, such expenditures would be difficult to make. So what I'm happy with the present numbers, but my expectations for the future is that the tax to GDP ratio must move on.
Mr. Kumar, that's an interesting point, but look at the current context when several parts of the economy want a break from taxes. And let me ask you this question specifically in the backdrop of what is happening with small and medium businesses in India right now that have suffered a 3rd bout of COVID-19-led restrictions. Many are struggling to survive. Do you think that their wish list of some sort of a tax break is valid and should be considered this time around?
Well, Tamanna, if you see the MSME sector, I would want to break it into 3 parts, because the micro enterprises, which cover almost like 90% of the MSME bracket, they are very small, and probably they pay GST on the whatever they they sell, but largely on the direct taxes, they may either be using the presumptive tax or not paying taxes, because they are very small. The question is, these and they generate a lot of employment. These enterprises include in that the small ones also. These enterprises will basically be looking for some kind of hand-holding, which the emergency lending did provide. But I think in the continuing circumstances, they need to be looking for something like a working capital fund available to them so that they can access that, because they need to resurrect themselves. They need to get onto the ground. And if they don't get onto the ground, then obviously a lot of the employment generation that the government is looking for would be difficult to make. So it's very important that these people either have access to equity, which is not so easy. So let us think of how do we provide them through the working capital so that they can come on the
ground. Let me also take this from the point of view of personal taxes. And there's an interesting survey that Deloitte and Times of India has done recently, where a vast majority of those surveyed, I think over 70%, are asking for some kind of easing on the personal tax front or the income tax front. Is that, in your view, pretty much wishful thinking? There is really no space for that kind of largesse?
Well, that expectation is very much there. And, some changes on either the standard deduction or increasing the medical expenses under ATD, or thinking of increasing the limit on the interest on the home loans. Those could be considered because it will play out on the larger part of the economy. When I talk about the interest on home loan, that will mean that more people are encouraged to buy the houses. That will also give fillip to the real estate sector, etc. Pandemic, many people had to withdraw parts of their PPF or provident fund, and so it's time for them to give some kind of rebate. But Tamanna, we also have to be quite mindful of that. This is a small section of the society, almost like call it about 20-25 crores. If I include with each taxpayer another multiplied by 4, being the family size, then that's the number. But there is a larger cross section of people who are definitely looking for a lot more help. So government will have to balance on that, and personal income tax, a little bit change here and there, will not really impact the overall tax revenue. So maybe the government can think about that and consider such expectations.
Just an interesting nugget I want to add here, a bit that came in the economic survey, where housing loans registered a growth of just 8% year on year in November 2021. That's less than November 2020 and quite a bit below the pre-pandemic levels, which was seeing an average of 21% growth. So definitely a fillip would be welcome there. Let me just go back to the first point you made when we started this conversation, Mr. Kumar, which was about increasing the tax to GDP ratio. And it's one of those things which every successive government says it's trying to do. What really can be done in a concrete fashion to ensure that a larger number of Indians do pay the taxes they need to?
Well, there has to be a particular strategy on widening of the direct tax base. And certainly this, I would not want to undertake a reform on that right away, because at the moment the economy is just coming up on that. But certainly, if you look at the GST, which was doing quite well, almost for each year, it was above 1 lakh crores of GST mop-up. So I think it will be very important when the going is good, make reforms on that, because maybe you are able to expand the base. So rate rationalization is definitely something which I would look at. Then when there is an opportune time, then definitely look for the direct tax reforms, because direct tax reforms will have to be much more intense on. And I'm not suggesting at this point of time that many of the exemptions or something should be withdrawn. In fact, there is a case for continuing one or two more or improving on those incentives based on their impact value. But at the moment, the direct taxes, if you actually look at it, it is just come to the 2019-20 number. So it is not a big enhancement, growth in terms of the revenue numbers. But certainly, some of the other things like dispute management
No, that's a very interesting.
etc. could be taken up.
Yeah. Sure. Now, that's an interesting perspective that you've placed there, that as far as direct tax revenue is concerned, we're still trying to get to pre-pandemic levels. It's better than expected, but we still have some miles to go. Thank you so much, Sanjay Kumar, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Daman.